taxes are already up by £1,700 per family. And it's only the beginning, because there's another budget coming. Behind closed doors, Labour are planning even more tax rises this autumn. Because Labour put up taxes at the budget last year, they killed growth. That means less money coming into the economy. So they'll have to put up taxes even further.
Rachel Reeves and the pension crisis. A chancellor under fire. Right. Before we dive into what could be the most consequential political minefield of 2025, if you're passionate about understanding the inner workings of British politics and the decisions that shape our nation's future, hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, you'll want to stay ahead of the curve on what's unfolding in Westminster. Picture this. You've spent decades meticulously planning your retirement, carefully tucking away every spare pound, trusting that the government won't pull the rug from under your feet. Now imagine the Chancellor, the person who holds a nation's purse strings, being warned by the very titans of Britain's pension industry to keep their hands off your hard-earned savings. This isn't just another political spat. This is a battle for the financial future of millions of Britons, and Rachel Reeves finds herself squarely in the crosshairs. The warning couldn't be more stark or more serious. Andy Briggs, the chief executive of Phoenix Group, Britain's largest pension company, mind you, has issued what amounts to a public ultimatum to the Chancellor. His message? Stay away from our pensions, or risk undermining the entire foundation of consumer confidence that underpins retirement planning in this country. When the head of a company managing hundreds of billions in pension assets feels compelled to speak out so forcefully, you know we're not dealing with routine political theater. But here's where it gets particularly intriguing, and frankly, rather alarming. Briggs isn't just making idle threats or engaging in corporate posturing. He's drawing on hard evidence from the chaos that unfolded in the lead-up to last year's autumn budget. Remember that period? The speculation was rampant, the rumor mill was in overdrive, and what happened next should serve as a cautionary tale for any chancellor contemplating pension reforms. Savers, spooked by whispers that Reeves might slash the tax-free allowance, began withdrawing their money prematurely. Think about that for a moment. People who had committed to long-term saving strategies suddenly felt compelled to abandon their plans based on nothing more than speculation about what the Chancellor might do. This wasn't rational market behavior. This was panic, pure and simple. And if you're wondering whether that subscribe button is still there, it is. And hitting it means you'll never miss these crucial political developments that directly impact your financial future. The current system allows pension savers to withdraw up to 25% of their savings tax-free from age 55, with a maximum of £268,275. It's not exactly a king's ransom, but for millions of workers, it represents a cornerstone of their retirement planning. It's a light at the end of the tunnel, the reward for decades of disciplined saving, the promise that their sacrifice will eventually pay dividends. Now, here's where Reeves finds herself in an absolutely impossible position. The government is staring down a fiscal hole of approximately £50 billion. Not million as some might hope, but billion with a capital B. That's the kind of money that keeps chancellors awake at night, the sort of deficit that demands either dramatic spending cuts, significant tax rises, or creative accounting that would make even the most flexible auditor blush. In this context, pension tax relief starts to look rather tempting, doesn't it? After all, it's money that's currently not flowing into the Treasury's coffers, and there's always been a certain political appeal to the argument that pension tax relief disproportionately benefits high earners. But as Andy Briggs warns, and as recent history demonstrates, messing with pensions is like playing with dynamite in a fireworks factory. The Phoenix Group CEO's language is deliberately measured, but the underlying message is crystal clear. Pensions are a very long-term business, and you shouldn't give consumers the impression that it may be chopped and changed on a regular basis. When you strip away the corporate diplomacy, what it's really saying is that pension policy requires stability, predictability, and above all, trust. Without these elements, the entire system begins to crumble. And this is where the politics becomes truly fascinating, because Reeves isn't just dealing with corporate pressure or economic theory. She's navigating the treacherous waters of public confidence, electoral promises, and the sort of political optics that can make or break a chancellor's reputation. Remember, this is a Labour government that came to power promising to be the responsible custodians of the economy, the grown-ups in the room after years of conservative chaos. But here's a delicious irony that should make any political observer sit up and take notice. In trying to fix a fiscal mess left by her predecessors, Reeves risks creating exactly the sort of policy uncertainty that undermines economic confidence. It's a classic case of the cure potentially being worse than the disease, and the pension industry is making damn sure she knows it. Steve Webb, the former Liberal Democrat pensions minister-turned-industry expert, has been even more blunt in his assessment. He has warned that raiding pension tax relief could create a political omnishambles, and if that term sounds familiar, it should. It was coined during George Osborne's disastrous 2012 budget, the one that included the infamous pasty tax and granny tax. When pension experts start throwing around that particular piece of political vocabulary, you know they're not messing about. Webb's analysis is particularly cutting because he understands both the political and practical dimensions of pension reform. Raiding pension tax relief may appear superficially appealing to a cash-strapped chancellor, he notes, but then delivers a killer blow. There are hidden dangers beneath the surface that could cause reforms to spectacularly backfire. And if you're enjoying this deep dive into the political machinations that could affect your financial future, don't forget to subscribe, because the story we're unraveling here is far from over, and the consequences will ripple through British politics for months, if not years, to come. The hidden dangers Webb refers to aren't just technical concerns about tax policy or administrative complexity. They are political landmines that could explode in the Chancellor's face with devastating effect. Think about it. Pension savers are voters, and they are exactly the sort of voters who turn up to polling stations with religious regularity. They are also the demographic most likely to have disposable income, political influence, and the time to make their displeasure known. Moreover, any changes to pension tax relief don't just affect current retirees or those approaching retirement. They send a signal to younger workers about whether the government can be trusted to keep its side of the retirement savings bargain. If a 30-something professional starts to doubt whether the pension tax relief they're receiving today will still be there when they retire in 30 years' time, they might well decide to reduce their contributions or seek alternative investment vehicles. This creates what economists call a confidence multiplier effect, where uncertainty about future policy leads to behavioral changes that actually make the fiscal situation worse. Fewer pension contributions mean less economic growth, lower tax receipts, and potentially higher costs for the state if people fail to save adequately for retirement. It's a sort of unintended consequence that looks disastrous in hindsight, but is remarkably easy to overlook when you're focused on immediate fiscal pressures. The political dimension is equally treacherous. Labour's 2024 manifesto contains specific commitments about not raising taxes on working people, and there's an argument that changes to pension tax relief could be seen as breaking that promise. The Conservative opposition would certainly seize on any such changes as evidence that Labour cannot be trusted with the economy, and given their recent struggles, they probably welcome the opportunity to go on the offensive. But perhaps most dangerously for Reeves, pension policy has a way of generating exactly the sort of complex, technical debates that the public finds bewildering and politicians find exhausting. Remember the confusion over the pension triple lock, or the chaos that surrounded pension freedoms. These aren't issues that lend themselves to soundbite politics or easy explanations, but they affect millions of people's lives in profound ways. And here's where the Chancellor's predicament becomes almost Shakespearean in its complexity. She needs to find £50 billion from somewhere, but every option comes with significant political or economic risks. Raise income tax, and you're breaking manifesto commitments. Cut public spending, and you're potentially undermining the very public services that Labour promised to protect. Increase borrowing, and you risk the sort of market reaction that brought down Liz Truss. In this context, pension tax relief starts to look like the least bad option, until you consider the warning from industry leaders like Andy Briggs. His intervention isn't just corporate lobbying. It's a recognition that pension policies sit at the intersection of economics, politics, and social policy in ways that make it uniquely hazardous to reform. The timing of these warnings is also significant. We're still months away from the next budget, which means this is very much a shot across the Chancellor's bow rather than a response to concrete policy proposals. The pension industry is essentially saying, we know you're looking at our sector, we know you're under fiscal pressure, but think very carefully before you act. It's a sophisticated form of political pressure that acknowledges the Chancellor's difficult position, while making it clear that any changes to pension policy will face fierce resistance from both the industry and consumers. And if you're finding this analysis helpful in understanding the complex political dynamics at play, that subscribe button is your gateway to staying informed about every twist and turn in this unfolding drama. The international context adds another layer of complexity to Reeves' dilemma. Britain's pension system is already under scrutiny from international investors and rating agencies, who are closely watching how the government handles its fiscal challenges. Any changes that undermine confidence in the UK as a stable, predictable jurisdiction for long-term savings could have broader implications for the country's economic reputation. Moreover, pension policy doesn't exist in isolation from other economic trends. We're living through a period of demographic change where an aging population is putting increasing pressure on both state and private pension systems. Birth rates are declining, life expectancy continues to rise, and the ratio of workers to retirees is shifting in ways that make pension sustainability a long-term challenge regardless of short-term fiscal pressures. In this environment, stability and predictability become even more valuable. If people lose confidence in the pension system's ability to deliver on its promises, they may reduce their contributions or seek alternative ways to provide for their retirement. This could include everything from buy-to-let property investment to overseas savings accounts, options that might provide individual security, but do little to support the broader UK economy. The corporate response to these pressures is also worth examining. Companies like Phoenix Group aren't just managing pension assets. They're making long-term business decisions based on their expectations about future policy stability. If they believe the government is likely to frequently tinker with pension rules, they'll factor that uncertainty into their pricing, their investment strategies, and their customer communications. This creates a feedback loop where policy uncertainty generates business caution, which in turn reduces economic growth and tax receipts, which increases the fiscal pressures that prompted the policy uncertainty in the first place. Breaking this cycle requires exactly the sort of long-term thinking that Briggs is advocating, but it's precisely the kind of approach that becomes difficult when you're facing immediate budgetary pressures. The electoral implications are equally complex. Pension policy has a way of cutting across traditional party lines in ways that can be politically dangerous. Conservative voters might traditionally be expected to support lower taxes and less government intervention, but many of them are also pension savers who benefit from current tax reliefs. Labour voters might support higher taxes on the wealthy, but they may also be concerned about changes that could affect their own retirement planning. This creates space for opposition parties to exploit any missteps, but it also means that any party in government faces similar constraints. The Conservatives discovered this during their various attempts to reform pension tax relief, and now Labour is learning the same lesson from the other side of the political divide. The professional and expert commentary surrounding this issue has been remarkably consistent in its warnings about the dangers of hasty reform. Beyond Steve Webb's omnishambles warning, numerous pension experts have highlighted the technical challenges involved in reforming tax relief systems, the potential for unintended consequences, and the importance of maintaining consumer confidence. This expert consensus doesn't necessarily make reform impossible, but it does suggest that any changes would need to be carefully designed, extensively consulted upon, and implemented with a level of political skill that few chancellors possess. The question is whether Rachel Reeves has the time, the political capital, and the technical expertise to navigate these challenges successfully. As we watch this story unfold, remember that this isn't just about abstract economic policy or Westminster point scoring. This is about the retirement security of millions of British workers, the stability of one of the country's most important financial sectors, and the credibility of a government that's still relatively new and trying to establish its economic competence. The next few months will be crucial in determining whether Reeves can thread the needle between fiscal necessity and political wisdom. The warnings from Andy Briggs and others in the pension industry suggest that the margin for error is exceptionally small, and the consequences of getting it wrong could be severe for both individual savers and the government's broader economic strategy. What we're witnessing is a masterclass in the complex interplay between economics and politics, where technical policy decisions have profound implications for millions of people's lives, and where the line between responsible governance and political survival can be remarkably thin. The Chancellor's response to these warnings will tell us a great deal about both her political judgment and her understanding of the delicate balance required to maintain confidence in Britain's financial systems. This is exactly the kind of political drama that shapes the future of our country, often in ways that only become clear years later. if you want to stay ahead of these crucial developments and understand how they might affect your own financial future. Subscribing to UK Connors ensures you never miss the analysis that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of what really matters. Because in British politics, it's not just about what happens. It's about understanding why it matters, who benefits, and what comes next.